Blessings and welcome to episode 5 of Exploring Esoterica. In this episode, we explore Lovecraft's horror, a gateway to mystical insights. What if the most terrifying horror stories weren't fiction at all, but glimpses into cosmic forces beyond our comprehension? That's exactly what one of the 20th century's most influential occultists believed about H.P. Lovecraft's work.
Hold on. Are you suggesting someone actually thought Cthulhu and those other nightmarish creatures were real?
Well, Kenneth Grant, who was Aleister Crowley's protege and head of a major occult organization, spent decades developing this fascinating theory that Lovecraft was unconsciously channeling genuine cosmic forces through his fiction and nightmares.
But wasn't Lovecraft famously skeptical of anything supernatural? Like, completely opposed to mysticism?
That's exactly what makes this so interesting. Grant argued that Lovecraft's rational skepticism actually made him a better channel for these forces, kind of like an unwitting prophet who couldn't consciously resist or filter the messages.
So how did Grant explain what was actually happening with Lovecraft?
He believed Lovecraft was tapping into what he called the deep unconscious. Think of it like Jung's collective unconscious, but way darker and more cosmic. He claimed these visions were actually contact with extraterrestrial intelligences and ancient pre-human knowledge.
That's wild. But how did he connect these fictional monsters to actual occult practices?
Oh man, this is where it gets really interesting. Grant created this elaborate system mapping Lovecraft's entities onto existing occult concepts. Like, he saw Yog-Sothoth as equivalent to Crowley's Aiwass, both being messenger entities that act as gates between dimensions.
What about some of the other Lovecraftian entities? How did they fit in?
Well, he connected Cthulhu to the concept of Choronzon, representing chaos and ego dissolution. And Azathoth, Lovecraft's blind idiot god, he linked to the Thelemic concept of Hadit, infinite nuclear chaos at the center of creation.
And I've heard there were connections to Eastern mysticism too.
Exactly right. Grant was deeply into Tantra, especially its darker aspects. He saw profound connections between Lovecraft's entities and figures like Kali, the dark goddess, all representing primal, chaotic feminine energy existing in what he called the shadow side of reality.
That sounds pretty intense. Were there actual practices developed around these ideas?
Oh yeah, Grant's followers would use Lovecraftian imagery in dream control and astral projection. They even developed something called the Necronomicon Gnosis, where practitioners would temporarily believe in the Lovecraft mythos to harness its power.
You know what's fascinating? How these ideas seem to blur the line between fiction and reality.
That's really the heart of it. Modern Chaos Magick practitioners still use these techniques, though they take a more psychological approach, viewing these entities as ways to access parts of the unconscious mind rather than literal beings.
So what do you think about all this? Could there be any truth to Grant's ideas?
Well, here's what's really interesting. Whether or not you believe in the literal reality of these entities, Grant touched on something profound about how fiction can reveal hidden truths. Maybe our nightmares and imagination are tapping into something deeper than we realize.
That's both fascinating and deeply unsettling. It makes you look at horror fiction in a completely different way.
And that might be Grant's most important legacy, not proving that Cthulhu exists, but showing how the boundaries between imagination, spirituality, and reality are much more permeable than we might think.
Though I have to say I might sleep with the lights on tonight, just in case.
Just remember, if you start seeing non-Euclidean geometry in your dreams, it's probably just your deep unconscious making contact with transcosmic entities. Nothing to worry about at all.
That's definitely not as reassuring as you think it is.
Well, maybe that's the point. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the monsters in our stories, but the possibility that those stories might be more real than we ever imagined. What follows is a more comprehensive overview of this podcast. Kenneth Grant, a prominent occultist and student of Aleister Crowley, developed a groundbreaking theory that reimagined H.P. Lovecraft's cosmic horror fiction as genuine mystical revelation. This interpretation, detailed in his work on the Necronomicon, bridges multiple esoteric traditions and continues to influence modern magical practice, creating lasting impacts on contemporary occultism. At the core of Grant's thesis is the provocative claim that Lovecraft's terrifying entities weren't merely products of imagination, but actual transcosmic forces existing beyond normal human perception. Grant believed Lovecraft was unknowingly channeling genuine mystical insights through his nightmares and fiction writing, similar to how prophetic visions have traditionally been received. This positions Lovecraft as an unwitting seer, accessing what Grant called the deep unconscious, a darker version of Jung's collective unconscious. Grant suggested these visions were actually contact with extraterrestrial intelligences, similar to Crowley's reported encounters with an entity called Lamb. The system Grant developed draws remarkable parallels between Lovecraft's pantheon and Thelemic entities. He equated Yog-Sothoth with Crowley's Aiwass, his holy guardian angel, seeing both as dimensional gatekeepers and divine messengers. Cthulhu was linked to Choronzon, representing chaos and ego dissolution, while Azathoth corresponded to Hadit, embodying infinite nuclear chaos at creation's center. Grant connected Nyarlathotep to Crowley's own magical persona, the Beast 666, viewing both as messengers of ancient powers. These correspondences formed the foundation of his magical system. Grant's work extends deeply into tantric territory, particularly through the concept of the dark goddess. He saw connections between entities like Shub-Niggurath and Hindu deities like Kali, representing primal feminine chaos. This tied into his ideas about Kundalini energy and the Qliphoth, the shadow side of the Kabbalistic tree of life, suggesting that Lovecraft's outer gods represented genuine forces lurking in these esoteric realms. Grant particularly emphasized the role of sexual magic, drawing from the Tantra Vama Marga tradition, which uses extreme states like horror and ecstasy to open portals to these forces. The practical applications Grant derived from these theories have significantly influenced modern magical practice, especially in Chaos Magick. His system suggests using Lovecraftian imagery for dream control and astral projection, particularly in navigating the tunnels of Set, a Thelemic concept of the underworld. He advocated treating the entities as egregores, thought forms, that can be evoked through sigils and ritual, and developed what he called the Necronomicon Gnosis, a practice where practitioners temporarily adopt belief in the Lovecraft mythos to access its power. However, Grant's ideas haven't been without significant criticism. Many Thelemites reject his literal interpretation of Lovecraft's work, preferring to see it as metaphorical. Critics point out that Lovecraft himself was an ardent materialist who explicitly denied any supernatural experiences. Some argue that Grant's connections between Thelema, Tantra, and Lovecraft's mythology are forced, lacking clear historical or conceptual links. This has led to ongoing debates about the validity of his interpretations. Despite these criticisms, Grant's influence on modern occultism has been substantial. His ideas have particularly shaped Chaos Magick, where practitioners like Peter Carroll and Phil Hine have embraced the use of pop culture icons, including Lovecraft's entities, as magical servitors. His work has also influenced left-hand path occultism and esoteric horror fiction, with authors like Alan Moore and Thomas Ligotti continuing to explore the intersection of occultism and cosmic horror. Grant's legacy raises intriguing questions about the nature of fictional and mystical truth. His interpretation suggests that powerful fiction can reveal hidden realities, that Lovecraft's atheistic horror stories might have inadvertently tapped into genuine currents of magical energy. Whether one accepts Grant's theories as literal truth or views them as creative magical innovation, his work represents a unique synthesis of modern horror, magical practice, and esoteric tradition that continues to resonate in contemporary occult circles.
Bénédiction de la nuit